Alan, we know that some of those victims are still recovering behind me here at Peace Health Riverbend. Of the 6 shooting victims, 1 is still in critical condition and 5 others are stable. Come 11:59 on Friday, the masks are coming off for good, but you may still see other pandemic precautions sticking around. A body in a cemetery. What's so suspicious about that? Well, here's the catch. The cemetery didn't know anything about it. It was under this tree where deputies discovered a suspicious wooden box Thursday. You can still see the evidence of Friday's shooting here at WOW Hall. This bullet hole, a scar on a historic Eugene building that mirrors the wounds our community will be dealing with for a long time. 5 people stranded in the snow for 22 hours with no service. 1 truck, their key to survival.
We were turning it off and on.
Kendall, Democrats have kept consistent hold of the governor's seat since 1987. But amid the current political landscape, Republicans are optimistic about this year's race. Now, a very scary scene for everyone here, as I'm sure you can imagine. I spoke with a number of people. One woman even witnessed it. She told me she was 30 feet away and she heard someone shout "gun" before hearing a popping sound, and then people started running. This is all that's left of one woman's property after the Holiday Farm fire destroyed her home and business. Today she's back to take the first steps in rebuilding.
So this area right here is where my laundry room would have been.
Frustration, worry, and sadness. Those are the emotions I heard from local veterans today as they react to the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan within days of America's withdrawal. Picture this, you're running late to work when your phone buzzes. It's so tempting to glance down, but this month law enforcement is reminding you that distracted driving can have deadly consequences. Good morning, Dane. You're right, it's a very special day for Tracktown. It's day 1 of the Olympic trials, and we're here at Hayward Field now, where as you can see we have a very big, very beautiful, but right now very empty stadium, and that's all going to change in just a couple of hours. With the masks coming off, we're showing our whole faces to the world, which for some means putting more effort and money into your reflection.
Well, Kendall, everyone out here celebrating would probably tell you things feel even better than normal. The Pine Pot has closed off part of the street today for their Celtic Celebration block party. You can hear the cheers right now.
You can see it's raining on us here in Thurston tonight, but that's not stopping unvaccinated teachers and staff in the Springfield School District from rallying today. That's after learning they'll be put on unpaid leave later this month, even if they were granted a religious exemption. You can see the signs held up by demonstrators. We can hear those honks and the sounds of cars passing by. There's no winners tonight in this heartbreaking situation with 2 grieving parents on opposite ends of a legal battle. It's a week to celebrate America's teachers and the hard work they do. But this year, a lot of that work done over a screen. These water bottles might be the only source of water in Mapleton for days. The town has run out of water, and it's not the first time they've had an issue with their water. Now residents are asking why.
I never drink the water in Mapleton. Because I don't trust it.
Smoke is in the air and heat is on the ground today here in Pleasant Hill, where a high school has been turned into a fire evacuation shelter. Jacqueline, these 2 investigators are technically just volunteers, but they're both retired police officers with decades of experience investigating violent crimes. And now they're taking a look at 3 unsolved murders that happened here in Eugene. And that's what today is all about. Of course, lots of local families impacted by the pandemic and last year's wildfires. So 100% of today's proceeds are going to make sure those kids have opportunities to play sports. Yeah. Kendall, there actually isn't a way to track deaths of the unhoused in Oregon, but that's about to change. On Monday, this campus will be bustling as students return to in-person classes for the first time in over a year. And Green Hill needs your help to take care of animals like Argos. We've raised over $20,000 so far today, which is so exciting, but we're only a few $1,000s away from that 25, which is the big number, because once we hit that, we're getting a dollar-for-dollar match, and that's really going to make a difference for these animals.
Absolutely. These animals all just need a happy home, and if that home happens to be Olivia's lap, then so be it. But you know what? If
Brandon, Jacqueline, tonight regularly scheduled dance classes have resumed here at the WOW Hall, but it's a different scene than it was 1 month ago today, when the sounds of a concert were interrupted by gunfire. Now, luckily, the 6 people that were shot have all survived, but the suspect is still at large. Starting Wednesday, the theater experience will look a lot different. You can forget about your mask and those extra few seats between you and your neighbor. Here's where the measure's at right now. It passed back on November 3rd. February 1st is when drugs were decriminalized, but funding for recovery centers takes a little bit longer. In April, $20 million in emergency funding was approved by the legislature, and the deadline to apply for that money was this week, May 3rd. Now those proposals are being reviewed, and that early $20 million must be dispersed to service providers by the end of June. It's an age-old question. Which part of the chocolate bunny do you eat first? I thought I'd ask an expert. What do you think? Ears? I agree. Before the pandemic, Lane County was already considered a child care desert, meaning there's more children in need of child care than there are available spots. And the pandemic only worsened the problem. Here's how lawmakers hope to address the lack and rising cost of child care in our state. Now, coming up, we'll have some tips on how to beat the heat, as well as what events to look out for the last weekend of Olympic trials. Live at Hayward Field, I'm Olivia Young. I'll send it back to you.
Tonight, the disappearance of Shane Springer is still a mystery. The Vitaman vanished more than 3 months ago in East Lane County, and no sign of him since that day. KVAL's Olivia Young retraced his steps from the day he went missing. She spoke to his family and investigators to get the facts in his case.
In fall of 2020, Shane Springer's Blue River home burnt to the ground in the Holiday Farm fire. He had plans to rebuild it, but he never got that chance. Following the loss of his home, the 47-year-old was living in a fifth wheel in Vida. Family describe him as an outdoorsy guy who loves to work with his hands.
Very modest, selfless, hard worker. I mean, he's done a lot of projects in the area for various people.
On November 2nd, Shane was doing just that, working as a carpenter on a Mackenzie Bridge home. This is the job site where Shane Springer was working the day of his disappearance. His family says he left and returned here to his home around 10 a.m. He hasn't been seen since.
We don't know what happened to him after he went home at 10 o'clock.
It wasn't until November 5th that a friend reported Shane missing after finding his truck on the 4th. This remote area near Blue River Reservoir is where family and friends found Springer's truck 2 days after his disappearance.
The initial report to us was that he was thought to be at one of his favorite mushroom picking spots.
But family members who live out of state don't believe he was mushroom hunting the day of his disappearance, and instead think he planned to go back to work.
He's a hard worker, and he would never, ever leave in the middle of a job to go mushroom hunting.
I stopped by Shane's home, the last place he was seen. Through a family friend, Shane's wife declined to speak with us, saying she's still mourning his disappearance. Investigators tracked cell phone activity, eyewitness accounts, and performed canine searches near where Shane's truck was found. But Speldrich says the terrain made searches difficult, and ultimately,
they didn't find where he was at or where he is at.
Now, after 3 months, the chances of finding Shane alive are dwindling.
If he's in the area in the woods, we would be looking more towards, finding a recovery type of operation.
Do investigators suspect foul play at all?
We have no evidence at this point to suggest that there's foul play. Certainly there's speculation in the community.
Shane's family shares that speculation.
Somebody knows something about where he is, and we just want them to come forward so that we can bring him home.
They're offering a $50,000 reward for information on his whereabouts.
First and foremost, to find him, to know where he is, what happened, then who's responsible, and he deserves justice and his family deserves answers.
Reporting in Blue River, I'm Olivia Young. Well, Alan, we know that some of those victims are still recovering behind me here at Peace Health Riverbend. Of the 6 shooting victims, 1 is still in critical condition and 5 others are stable. Eugene police says 2 victims were female and 4 are male. Now, I spoke with a woman who was at WOW Hall last night and actually rendered first aid to one of those victims. Here's her firsthand account of last night's shooting. It's every mother's worst nightmare.
The fear. I mean, your mom, I don't care how old they are, you're still a mom.
Becoming a reality for one Eugene woman when a shooting caused chaos at WOW Hall, where she was watching her son perform.
Shots fired. And I'm looking in the crowd and I don't see my boy.
The woman, who asked not to be named or shown on camera, ran to the stage, relieved to find her son and his wife unharmed. But others weren't so lucky.
I walked out the back door and saw blood everywhere and young people laying on the ramp.
Outside the hall, she immediately saw 3 shooting victims, including one man who appeared to have been shot in the torso.
He was in shock. He really didn't, I asked him where you shot. He goes, I don't know, but it hurts right here.
She rushed to help the man, who she estimates was about 20.
Took off my hoodie and just started applying pressure on it. And, I kept telling him, you're going to be okay. It's all right. You're going to be okay.
Eventually, first responders arrived and took the man away on a stretcher.
I don't know what kind of condition he's in, but I hope that he's okay, and I feel for his mom.
Now, the woman tending to her own family's wounds.
I'm shook up. I'm not sure how to process it.
Later finding out that 2 of the 6 shooting victims were in her extended family.
My son's in-laws was shot in the foot, and his girlfriend was shot in the thigh.
Though she says they're in stable condition, she worries for them and for the other victims.
This is going to traumatize them and scar them for the rest of their lives, no matter how their physical wounds heal.
Now, that woman says right now she's praying for a safe recovery for everyone injured and for that shooter to be caught. Now, this shooting comes amid a critical blood shortage. If you're interested in learning more about donating, you can go to bloodworksnw.org. Live at Peace Health Riverbend, I'm Olivia Young. Back to you, Alan.
Olivia, this is a weekend sledding trip gone wrong. What happened?
That it is, Jacqueline. They were at a sledding hill that they've been to before. However, their truck got stuck on a rock, and with no cell phone service and in a remote area, the situation quickly became dire. Today, I learned how the family's preparations and the father's bravery helped search teams find them and bring them home safely. It started as a family day in the snow.
Just have a snow day. Kids out playing.
The Baumgardner family, parents Renelle and Joby, sons Colton and Caleb, friend Thomas and their 2 dogs, enjoyed a day of sledding on a remote hill near Box Canyon Sunday. But when the group turned to head back, disaster struck.
We just caught a slight slope on the tire, and it just kind of pulled us into like a downward pull, and we couldn't get out.
Renelle says their Chevy Silverado was high-centered on a rock and wouldn't budge.
We were stuck, yeah. We all started trying to SOS our phones and 911 text everybody that we could and call 911.
But there was no cell phone service and no one else in sight. As darkness fell, reality sunk in.
Super dangerous. It's snowing really hard, and it's dark, and then we stayed the night.
5 people stranded in the snow for 22 hours with no service. One truck, their key to survival.
We were turning it off and on.
Yeah, we'd probably run it, every hour, run, keep the truck warm, and then turn it off.
Luckily, the group had gas in their tank and had packed food and water. Overnight, they tried to stay warm and keep calm.
It was a little scary, yeah. Just trying to stay positive and try to get out, I guess.
In the morning, Joby made the difficult decision to leave the car and walk to find help.
We were depending on him. I'd prep the boys hey, something might happen and he might not come back with help right away. So it was definitely scary. The scariest thing I ever, had to do.
For 5 hours, Joby walked.
I feel like it was about 10 miles, so I kept paying attention to the milepost.
Then finally, he spotted a U.S. Forest Service worker.
But that right there was the kicker. I was like, there's somebody here. So it just kind of, yeah, it was a good thing.
That person helped Joby connect with search and rescue teams and led them back to the car, to an emotional rescue.
They were very excited. We pulled up alongside them, and one of the boys was in the back seat of the car, and the window was rolled down. And he leans out the car and is telling us to stop, as if we're going to keep going and forget about them.
The team got the vehicle off the rock and caravanned the group home, returning cold but safe after the longest snow day of their lives. Coming home, the Baumgardners had no idea that extensive searches had taken place looking for them. Their family and Thomas's family, the Blantons, say they're overwhelmed with gratitude for the search efforts that saved them and the support they've received. Mapleton, Oregon. It's picturesque small town America. But for months, tensions have been bubbling up relating to this town's water.
It is a huge issue. I'd say the biggest issue that a town could have.
Mapleton residents like Vanessa West faced with a potential water shutoff.
They're going to shut people off, disconnect notice on November 1st.
After many refused to pay high bills earlier this year.
In February, out of nowhere, we just got these crazy high bills. Some families, got even $4,000 water bills when they'd been paying, $80, $100 a month consistently.
The issue appears to be the town's water meters. West says hers is so old it's unreadable. After some back and forth, the water district crediting 50% of high February bills. But many residents still aren't happy.
The Mapleton community doesn't trust him because we haven't gotten a straight answer as of to what really happened.
The bills aren't the first problem with Mapleton's water. The town was under a boil water order for nearly 5 months in 2020. Residents say those persistent issues have led to high turnover within the board, including the superintendent retiring earlier this year.
Admittedly, we were having some board turnover, and it's ongoing.
It's an issue incoming Superintendent Dustin Basurto doesn't deny. I sat down with him to get his perspective on the town's water wars. Why do you think that members of this community don't trust you?
Regaining the trust of the community, and after you've lost it, it's hard to regain. It was a scramble for a long time, and we were really behind the ball.
Now Basurto trying to play catch up, getting advice from neighboring water districts and calling in the Oregon Association of Water Utilities for a rate survey. The water district has received millions in recent grants and from the American Rescue Plan. Basurto says those funds will go to replacing those old meters and the entire water plant.
So I think the good news is that we'll have a new plan on July 4th. We'll have brand new smart meters.
As for those shutoffs,
we don't want to shut anybody off, but we also have to maintain water and be sustainable.
A water district under pressure and a town thirsty for answers. Reporting in Mapleton, I'm Olivia Young. These water bottles might be the only source of water in Mapleton for days. The town has run out of water, and it's not the first time they've had an issue with their water. Now residents are asking why.
I never drink the water in Mapleton. Why? Because I don't trust it.
Mapleton residents thirsty for answers after months of boiling water last year and reports of abnormally high bills earlier this year.
As a matter of fact, I'm carrying mine right now because I was going to walk down there and see if they can explain it to me because it doesn't make sense.
It's been a big learning curve for all of us, and we're kind of learning from it.
We first met Vanessa West when she was speaking out about those high bills. Now she's secured a seat on the water board herself.
We are pretty much out of water.
Just in time for the latest issue, a complete water outage.
All the leaves and sticks that just got washed down from all of our lovely maple trees here in Mapleton have came down and plugged our filtration system.
West says the water treatment plant is completely down. While the district tries to clean it out, they've hired a company to install a backup filtration system that should bring water back to Mapleton Thursday.
So we may have water off and on for the next couple days, but no guarantees.
If it's short term, not so bad, but a couple of days, I don't like that.
Until then, residents will have to rely on bottled water from Lane County Emergency Services.
Today's going to be mostly door to door because of the limited amount we have.
And if water is still dripping from the tap, residents will need to boil it until further notice and conserve it because right now every drop is precious.
When the water does come back on, if we do get a little bit, conserve, at least until a minimum of Thursday.
Reporting in Mapleton, I'm Olivia Young. Jacqueline, these two investigators are technically just volunteers, but they're both retired police officers with decades of experience investigating violent crimes. And now they're taking a look at 3 unsolved murders that happened here in Eugene. They think they may be close to solving them. In fact, in one case, they think someone still living here in Eugene may hold the answer. Take a look. Drew Tracy and Rick Gillum aren't getting paid for their time.
And I can tell you at least on 2 of these cases, we put in over 1,000 hours each.
But they don't mind. The retired police officers are volunteering in EPD's cold case unit, breathing life back into 3 old murder cases.
We use a little science, a little math, a little old age investigative techniques, and we kind of put that all together.
The investigators do the majority of their work from home, conducting follow-up interviews, combing through old police reports, and creating genealogical charts.
Here's reports, and then from that I got my little sticky notes.
A former EPD officer himself, Gillum worked on some of the cases when they happened.
I do vividly remember a lot of the victims' families, and for me personally, that's would be the greatest reward if we solve these cases. For the victim, to get some justice, and for their family to know that the victim got some justice.
Gillum hopes to soon bring closure to the family of Sharon Hiller, an exotic dancer found dead at the Willamette River in November of 1992. He and Tracy are using the newest technology to re-examine DNA from that crime scene.
We use the math and science to do the genealogy, so we can look at the genetic with the family trees, just like the Golden State Killer, to try to build down to a possible suspect.
An even older case is the 1978 murder of Karen Whiteside.
It involves a 16-year-old girl who was accosted, sexually assaulted, and then left for dead at Fairfield Elementary School back in 1978.
After re-examining evidence, Tracy and Gillum have a person of interest in that case, someone who's already in prison. And the investigators believe they may be close to solving another nearly 30-year-old case.
In Halloween of 1992, there was a party, and the party was here in Eugene, and it was at 4th Avenue and Blair Boulevard.
After attending that party, Tracy says Octaviano Zaragoza was attacked near the basketball courts in Washington Jefferson Park. He died the next day.
We believe that there still are people out here who were at that Halloween party who may have known, may have seen this attack.
Investigators coming out of retirement and finding answers out of the cold. If you have information on any of those three cases, call 541-682-2871 to speak with Tracy or Gillum. And the Cold Case Squad is looking for one more volunteer to help out, someone with investigative experience. But if you don't have that experience and you still want to help out, EPD is still looking for volunteers to help out in other units. And you can find information on applying for that on our website. Live at the Eugene Police Department, I'm Olivia Young. Back to you, Jacqueline. Jacqueline, they're still recovering. They originally hoped to hold an event at the high school track yesterday, where some people were actually trapped while fleeing that fire last year. However, coronavirus concerns combined with the smoke we're seeing forced plans to change to a drive-by procession that took place last night. I was there as those who lived through this fire remembered it.
It seems like it was just yesterday, but it also feels like it was a lifetime ago.
It's a night Mackenzie residents will never forget.
It was scary, it was dark and there was fire everywhere and ash and trees falling, and driving through it was pretty crazy.
Fleeing the fast-spreading Holiday Farm fire a year ago, when the smoke cleared, hundreds of homes destroyed.
Going down the river and see a chimney here or a burnt-out car there, where there used to be like a beautiful home.
And what was left standing forever changed.
It's overwhelming, absolutely overwhelming.
1 year later, the community is still recovering. This Orchid Temporary Clinic is still a primary source of health care after the Mackenzie River Medical Clinic burned down in that fire. Monday night, that clinic healing deeper wounds. Those who lost everything staging there before a procession west on 126.
We need to do something. We need to do something to commemorate the fire.
Cars starting their engines at 8:30 p.m., the same time the Holiday Farm fire started, and retracing their steps on that emotional drive 1 year ago.
I spent about 20 minutes this morning just bawling because it hit me and I didn't realize it was going to hit me that hard.
Melanie Stanley lost both her home and business in that fire. Like many others, she's still healing, recently securing permits to begin rebuilding.
There's still so much damage and so much recovery that needs to happen that I just don't want people to forget that.
It's an uphill battle for everybody and it's not over yet.
A community coming together to remember the fire.
We're still all have that same togetherness that we had, week 2, week 3.
And rise from the ashes stronger.
You go down the river and you see sunflowers and you see flowers everywhere and you see green everywhere. So, there's life coming back.
Now, the rebuilding process is a long one. Many, like Melanie, have not yet broken ground, and others have decided not to rebuild or don't have the resources to do so. But that community is Mackenzie strong, and I've seen their determination to recover this past year. They're hoping this next year will bring more healing and regrowth upriver.
Destroyed more than 400 homes. A grassroots relief team is helping some of those homeowners start that recovery process.
Our Olivia Young was in Blue River today. She has more on how you can help that community recover.
This is all that's left of one woman's property after the Holiday Farm fire destroyed her home and business. Today she's back to take the first steps in rebuilding.
So this area right here is where my laundry room would have been. The area right here is where my kitchen was.
Melanie Stanley still gets emotional when she visits her home of nearly 30 years. With this last debris finally getting cleared out, how does that make you feel?
Wow. It's kind of bittersweet because it means we can start moving forward, but it also means that we're finally getting to say goodbye to this too.
Tuesday, Stanley's saying that goodbye and planning to rebuild both her home and general store.
It's going to be bigger than the house that we had here before, and it'll be in a similar footprint.
Those first steps with help from a grassroots relief team.
Today, I'm just plotting, getting to know people, getting to know the lay of the land.
During last year's wildfires in Oregon, Mark Brooks created a Facebook group to help evacuate animals.
And it just hasn't stopped since, really.
Today, that effort has morphed into the Cascade Relief Team, a nonprofit that helps communities recover.
If you can get a few lots cleaned up and a few people ready to take action, it's amazing that sparks true hope in the community.
Next weekend, the relief team will have a volunteer cleanup in Blue River.
Anybody can come out. We do have stuff that anybody can do. We have stuff for social distancing.
The team will safely dispose of debris and prepare lots like Stanley's for temporary use, finding new growth out of the ashes.
I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm happy because it means that we can finally hopefully be able to move forward from this chapter.
Reporting in Blue River, I'm Olivia Young.